Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So this effectively is going to kind of be a part 2 video of the paywall champions. And this isn't geared towards the paywall itself, it is geared towards the shift in the champion abilities and champion focus yet again. Because obviously we kind of feel like we have already been here exactly, or just about exactly, a year ago, when Kabam released Bullseye, Serpent, Photon, and kind of quick succession of one another. The game felt drastically worse. Because every time you entered the game, you had to fight these champions in every single competitive game mode. Every Alliance War map, you had these champions in defense. Every Battlegrounds match, you either had to ban these champions or face them and get wrecked. And, you know, players genuinely felt like it's a bit too much. It is quite an unpleasant environment. To which Kabam replied to us that, you know, we get it, we heard you. It's like we had too many awesome attackers, not as many great defenders. The game kind of needed to catch up. We kind of have done that, and we plan on, you know, easing up on the defender release in the future and stagger it better, and so on and so forth. And it genuinely feels like 1 year later, we're just about back there, with maybe a bit different focus on borderline unkillable defenders to doable defenders, kind of, but much larger quantity of them. And that is what I'm going to try and showcase you. But most importantly, I do want to hear your thoughts. What has been the general feeling of all the defensively oriented champions recently? Because if you take it flat out here, so these are effectively all the champions, or most of the champions that have been released this year that we can see here. And obviously we have to look at Deathless Thanos, who is, you know, a major defensive threat and kind of like a dual purpose, you know, juggernaut, one of the top champions in the game. Then we have champions like Gentle, and even though Gentle is marked down as 3.5 in defense, you know, he is a potent defender. There aren't too many champions that can quickly deal with him, and he still absolutely catches people, even a significant portion of the time on. I do not have to talk much about Zola. Like, a big Zola is just about an auto ban, or you do need to have like very, very specific options against him. And he's currently one of the most aggressive defensive threats that we have. And that gets soon followed up by Jean Grey. And again, Jean Grey is marked only 3 as defender. But honestly, on a personal note, like for most part, when I see Jean Grey, more often than not, I do ban her, because in between her force field reducing the damage and her stalling the fight out with the debuffs and exhaustions and involving reverse control, she's not an easy champion to handle at all. So I do kind of feel like the 3 there could be a bit disingenuous in her defensive prowess. And then we obviously have Spider-Woman, who again will also have like 3.5 in defense, and she is a threat. And whilst I do not see her too often, and she poses plenty of problems as well, that when you see, you kind of want to ban, but you have a limited amount of bans. Thing that I absolutely disagree is Lumitrix. Lumitrix past several seasons has been an absolute menace on defense, and short of opponent having a couple of very specific counters like Juggernaut or Starhand Spidey and a couple more, he's been, you know, a very solid dual threat, and also definitely put in a ton of work defensively, and has, in my opinion, better than 3 out of 5 defensive rating. And that comes even before we need to look at like 4 out of the 5 latest release, because obviously we have the paywalled, pay-gated, the premium package Dark Phoenix, who is still one of the most annoying. The way I look at Dark Phoenix is just about as Electro 2025 with less counters. Obviously you can have counters, you do have counters, but it is impossible to deny her impact on defense. Now we need to talk about Yelena Belova, who is such a potent defender that even as a 6-star, she's just about impossible to nuke. I think as a 6-star, somebody fastest ever who has killed Yelena, that was I think in last match in like 45 or 49 seconds. I think it's 49 seconds, it was like rank 3 Deadpool X-Force, and he got extra damage in that meta. And yeah, in general, you know, she rarely goes down below like 50 seconds as a 6-star, which is insane, even if opponents do have like the perfect counters. And I test her in Invade meta, she's insane offensively as well there, but in general, You know, she gets banned a lot as a 6-star. That's how annoying she is on defense. And then I also have the Captain Britain rework, which nobody really asked for or expected. Marked down as 4 in defense, but currently, you know, a solid third of the matches that I have won climbing to Gladiator Circuit and in Gladiator Circuit have been throwing down my 6-star Captain Britain on defense. Because, again, she's just cooking people with her safeguard, with everything, and just about no one goes out with full health against her outside of, like, Jack or something. And then, obviously, one of the 2 new champions here. We do have Nico Minato, who's marked down as 4, and is definitely defensively quite finicky in between her buff control, burst of damage, power gain that she has, and obviously poison whenever you do trigger one of your immunities. And she's going to be a new dual threat as well, absolutely. And that is not all, folks. Because obviously we did recently have our Art of Fire sales, right? That did give us a 7-star Nick Fury, which now, yet again, is an ever-present defensive threat that people do need to account for. And yes, obviously he does counters, but we also have Fam now, who is not, you know, the easiest champion to take on defense at all. And therefore, we are here. It feels like, it genuinely does feel like, never a ending amount of defenders pouring in the game monthly. Feels like 2/3 of the champions being released have either very potent or insanely busted defensive abilities. And I think that kind of fits here as well, because Zola is an insane defender. Bastion, we haven't seen much of him, but he's obviously primarily an attacker, nothing too crazy in defense. But then we have Dark Phoenix, who's definitely a defender. Then we have Falcon, who's irrelevant in every single which way. Then we have Gentle, who, you know, people do use offensively, but again, primarily he's used defensively, honestly, right now. And, you know, he's quite frustrating. Then we have Jean Grey, who's, again, meant to be a double purpose champion, but, you know, currently still definitely poses a massive threat on defense. We got Lumitrix, again, potentially absolutely wrecking champion for you. And again, you can do these fights. They're not like Serpent, with the exception of like Zola and maybe a couple others, but they are still very, very potent defenders. And here's the question. Do you guys like it? Do you guys prefer it? Is this the type of champion arrangement that you enjoy more? Because, for instance, at end of 2024, Kabam kind of had laid off on that, because Thanos being like one of the latest champions released, we got Isophine, Dazzler, Spiral, you know, Jack Scream, Shatra, Count Nefaria, basically any champion, every champion since Enchantress was, you know, kind of largely focused on attack. And then again, we had the Enchantress, Better Bill, the leaders kind of like Nothing Burger, same as like Patriot and, you know, these. So we had like a good spot of fairly limited amount of defenders until 2025 hit. And as soon as that did happen, it's kind of like all hell broke loose. And that's definitely at least my feeling now as well, is in the Battlegrounds, because obviously you do scan through the rank 4s, but then you do also immediately look for like Jean Grey or Zola or, you know, some other of the new defenders like Yelena, just because you do not want to kind of like really end up facing them, especially because there is fairly limited amount of counters and they are still, you know, relatively difficult to fight. So that's the question. Do you guys prefer spamming defenders every single month, or do you guys kind of want, you know, for them to take a breather and then releasing a couple, and then take a breather and then releasing a couple? Because, you know, depending how intensive you play and how aggressive you are chasing the new champions, there are good arguments for both. You know, every month getting one defender, one attacker, or primarily getting attackers and then, you know, one defender every 2 months or something like that. What would be the schedule that you think is fine? Because for me, 2025 has been spamming a bit too many defenders. Again, it's a mixture of, obviously, the new champions, almost all of them having significant defensive abilities, with Kabam releasing, exclusive defensive champions, with Kabam releasing, brand new 7 stars that didn't exist before, 7 stars that had a lot of defensive potential. And overall, that does kind of feel a lot. Again, like thinking about these last couple of months. So we have Captain Britain rework already causing problems. Zola is still out there causing problems. Dark Phoenix is like barely a month old, if that, and she's still causing problems. Lumitrix and Yelena are definitely causing problems. So it just feels like, again, an absolute explosion of defenders. And, it's one thing that it's, super expensive or hard to acquire them immediately. Therefore, you do have to wait out the period when they are their most effective. Because, again, anybody who's going to get Zola, for instance, when the Titan Crystals update or, tomorrow or whatever, you're already not getting as much benefit out of that Zola as people who got him from, let's say, early access bundles. Because now, Kabam is already starting to releasing counters to Zola, like, Carolina Dean and updated Phoenix, and we have learned that we can use Starkey against him and a handful of other champions. So, he's not going to be defensively as potent as he was, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. He just isn't going to be. The same thing with Serpent. Serpent, initially, effectively, with a death sentence. Now, Kabam has released, half a dozen counters to him. And whilst he can't necessarily get nuked, and there are metas where he's harder than others, you can kind of count on opponent having plenty of counters for Serpent in their decks, and that Serpent not necessarily getting banned. So, things definitely seem to be changing. Things definitely seem to be shifting. Question is, do you think it's for better or worse? Let me know, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So